And here we are. We are now live. We'll see how and when and how many people show up.
Cool. And you're just watching a YouTube live
Yeah.
of the debate?
Yep. Yeah, CBS has their own YouTube live for the debate. Or yeah, their own live. I'm just doing since CBS is running it. Testing. What's up, Cam? How's it going, buddy? Say hello, Cam, to the new co-host of our new podcast name. This is Eden.
This is Eden. Hello.
That's Eden.
Can't see
Wait,
anything,
there.
but...
Finger pointing. That's Eden. I know on here you're on this side, but on everything else you're the other way because of the way the camera is pointing.
Very.
Can you hear me, Cam? Can you hear us? Are we hearing? What's up, Cody? Okay, good. Can you hear Eden okay? Say hi, Eden.
Hello. Testing. Can you hear me?
Tell us about yourself in a few minutes when everyone arrives.
Me?
I think that's who he's talking about. Cam likes to learn about people.
Do that.
He is...
I love to share, so...
There you go. I feel like I need to put background music on because
I could hum, but I don't think it'll pick up great. So.
Good morning, Spoonie. Good morning, Laura. Good morning, Willow. Morning. I'm so used to streaming in the morning that when I'm in the evening, I say morning still. Good evening, everybody. Hey, Kia. Good evening.
Maybe everyone's in Europe. I don't know.
Hashtag pickles for Kamala. Sorry, that's an inside joke in the community. We had a guy come on and try and be interesting when it came to talking about pickles, and we decided to turn it into a joke.
That's probably the best thing to do.
Yeah. I'm so messed up these days. I could totally believe you. Yeah. Yeah. All pickles and trash. No. That is not what we're that's not what we're about. What's up, Shane? You streaming the debate? Yes. There is just no it's still like commercials and stuff, Liz. So yeah. Everyone who's on here, I don't know how many people are on TikTok. There's nobody on YouTube. I don't know if we'll get anybody on YouTube. I'm not really worried about that. This is like a test right now. Yeah, if you guys want to join on YouTube, we're live on YouTube as well. So but that you don't have to. But yeah, so this is Eden. Eden is a mutual, and we recorded a podcast, and I was a dummy and forgot to turn on one of the audio inputs into the recording. So everything Eden said in the entire time was not there.
And I said some really good stuff.
You said some really good things.
Now I'll just have to say it again.
But yeah, yeah, it was bad, Cam. I felt like such a dork. Sounds like you were being selfish. No, I would have much rather heard what she was saying than what I was saying. Podcast foul. But you know what? I made it up to her by saying, hey, join me in the podcast. So you're going to be seeing her a lot if you watch the podcast. As a lot of you know, who are part of this community usually, the name looks different because, because I've turned this channel into the podcast channel. I'll still be going live, but you'll be seeing, obviously, Ed in some videos when we do stuff for YouTube. She'll probably join in some lives every once in a while. Most of it will be on the YouTube side, but hey, Juniper. Under the old name, I'm sorry. I had to change the name because for those of you that don't know, October 17th, 9:30 p.m. October 17th, 9:30 p.m. Huge event going on. It's going to be simulcast on YouTube and TikTok. We're releasing something that is pretty crazy. You're going to start seeing ads for what's going on starting next week. But yeah, it's there's some really cool stuff going on. So that's why I had to change the names now, because we're going to be pushing people to the YouTube. So yeah, that's why I had to make the change. Things aren't even ready. You're releasing that you're starting a run for, no, I am not releasing that I'm starting a run for president in the next 3 weeks. That's not a thing. That's not a thing. Here, we can let you guys hear what's going on. Just so you know, we might be talking during this. We're gonna kind of pretend like we're doing a podcast-ish kind of thing. So while it's going on, we might talk. So if you come on and you're like, I don't want to hear them talk at all, you might want to find another place to hang. So we're going to be talking with you guys and with each other.
A longer strike would disrupt the supply chain.
Oh, what are they talking about?
Your perishable foods to cars and construction materials.
They're talking about the.
We also know that things like fuels.
They're talking about the dock
for
closing.
Example, diesel, gas. Those are actually transported in ways that are not expected to be impacted by the strike.
What are they called?
New York Governor Kathy Hochul,
starts with
there's
an
no
L.
need to be running and panicking and going to the grocery store and stockpiling goods.
Someone on TikTok will be able to tell me.
Sure, still these concerns coming just 5 weeks out from this election. But the other top issue on the campaign trail, how much families are struggling to cover the cost of childcare. This has been a big one.
Longshoremen,
in terms of talking
that's what
points.
it is.
Senator
Thank
Vance
you, Laura.
made some headlines recently over his suggestion that grandparents should be more involved.
Yeah, Cecilia,
Under
this
the
caught the attention of a lot of parents and young kids.
Longest dock strike lasted 11 days, trying not to worry.
Point for both Vance
what are you watching?
here's
It's CBS.
The brutal reality. The cost of childcare is rising faster than inflation. It's almost double the rate of inflation. Both
I'll just
of
have
these
to switch it
candidates
off
have said
when
they support
and by the way, I
permanently
put up
expanding the child tax credit.
Eden's
Harris and
because
Walz
because of the way we're doing this, we couldn't have her join in via her TikTok. So if you want to follow her on TikTok, she's actually like crazy close to 10,000.
Told our colleague Margaret Brennan back in August.
Help me out,
supports an expanded child tax credit, expanded child care options for families beyond preschool and daycare. But that grandparents' comment certainly striking a chord, saying aunts and uncles should be helping out more too, Cecilia.
Yeah, Jolene, I was really
the aunts
struck
and
by
uncles.
this next one on
aunts
housing.
and uncles need to help out with your kids.
Poll found that half of Americans aged 30
That's what they're
to 64,
talking about.
They
if
are
you have
not
the CBS one
confident
up,
that they will ever
talking
reach
about how
the American dream of being able
aunts
to own
and
a
uncles
home.
should take care of your kids for you.
What are the campaigns promising to change that?
Because we all
Cecilia,
have that.
look, you've
Introduction
got the Fed cutting
time?
interest rates last
You wanna
month,
introduce
right?
yourself?
And you've got more Americans who want to get back into the housing market, so it's
Yes.
kind of encouraging to see.
Yeah.
But Vice President Harris has now proposed a
I'm
$25,000
let me mute this so everyone can hear you. There you go.
Okay. Hi, I'm Eden. I just moved to a swing state from a very not swing state. It's been a very exciting time. I've been doing a lot of voter registration. I'm not sure if this is what people wanted to hear, but that's all. That's my life right now. It's just registering people to vote. So it's been a lot of fun. I'm from Colorado though, and now I'm doing TikTok. I started doing TikTok to relieve my election anxiety, and it's become a very fun activity on the side. So
Her TikToks are hilarious. She's one of those ones that likes to pick on the MAGA. So
I can't help it.
what was your major in college?
Oh, fun fact about me. Never went.
Oh,
So
that's okay. I didn't finish. So you're in.
I technically I've done a little bit of it.
Yeah.
But
Me too.
it's just a student of life.
Yeah.
So
What are your interests?
well, I do love the outdoors. No, I music's
Do you like
usually
long walks
my-
on the beach? And
I actually hate long walks on the beach, but I do like long walks among the trees.
Cam,
So
did you just ask who she was voting for? She just said she's working in voter registration with the Democratic Party.
technically we're nonpartisan, but we're a progressive.
She is
nonpartisan
nonpartisanly working voter registration, but she makes fun of MAGA.
This is true. Yeah, there's only one person I would be voting for in this situation. It's not Jill Stein. So
Yeah. The one who doesn't even know how many
many
members of the
people
House
are
of
there?
Representatives there are. Cody asked which organization you work for.
Well, off the record, I'm just gonna. I don't know the rules about. They're very
Okay,
strict
we can.
about like what we say.
We will
But
not.
no, I'll tell you, the PAC is Next Gen America. That's our that's the. I recommend you go to the nextgenamerica.org and check to make sure you're registered.
There you go. Hashtag Next Gen America. Can she see the chat? She can unless she pulls up like TikTok on her phone or something.
I should actually do that.
She's gonna do
Sorry, I should have thought about that.
No, you're good.
before.
Who's really considering Stein, but there's something very off about her. My issue with Jill Stein is for someone who has run for president more than probably any person ever. She's run for president 4 times. She knows nothing about government. To not know how, even close to how many people are in the House of Representatives is bonkers. It's bonkers. She's in the Discord. She just doesn't use Discord. So she's one of those Heidi Discord people where she's
Me?
yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm
Oh,
gonna
you don't
be
need
more
to be you don't need
active.
to apologize. Cam wants everyone to join the Discord all the time. So
That's fair. I just
it's okay.
I'm bad at Discord. I don't really ever use it.
No.
That's okay. Yeah,
But I keep
Jill
telling
Stein.
her she needs to get on and talk to people because there's a lot we've got a lot of politics talkers and everything talkers. So there's a
Yeah,
lot of talkers.
I need to at least be more. I need to be more invested in observing.
Mm.
So
I'm in too many and it gets way too hard to keep up. No, I understand. Yap Central. Yep. It's kind of true. Religious? Are you asking if she is religious or are you just or is that the question?
religious.
Religious?
I am a Jew, if that helps. High holidays are coming up.
There you go.
Make the world a better place. Not a more violent one. That's what we say.
Night. How'd you get connected? TikTok.
TikTok.
TikTok. What's up, Kiva? I have all my servers muted except Mike's because I actually like talking to y'all. Heck yeah. See, John loves our Discord. It's the
There's
only
someone
one that he pays attention to. Okay, thanks for the heart. Why is this a match made in heaven for a podcast? She likes to talk. And
I
she
love
actually
to talk.
She likes to talk and she likes to ask questions. When we did the podcast that shall not be named, that we lost everything on, she actually asked questions back, which doesn't usually happen. Didn't even happen with the person that I was doing it with before. It was pretty much me talking and asking the questions. So, not to mention she's in a different age group, which I also was wait, is that why you didn't link in her sound? Is that why I didn't link in her sound? No, that's not why I didn't link in her sound. I'm excited to see how Walls will present himself. You know, I am too. She's not 20. She's close to 25. Yeah. Mike, when are we starting a food podcast? When I get a large enough kitchen that I could set up a camera and actually have people see what the heck I'm doing, then I'd be happy to do an offshoot podcast about food. So one of the reasons that we're going with a more perfect podcast is, I feel like it's kind of a good umbrella name that we could do offshoot, like kind of playlists in there that have to do with different things, because, you know, I do stuff screaming at Christians and you know, Eden likes to scream at everybody. So, you know, we're gonna do stuff. I used to do food streams on Twitch. I have a great kitchen with a 3-cam setup. Lucky. I wish I had a big kitchen. Looking forward to this. Just got here. Heck yeah. Oh, I can turn it back on. Oh, excuse me. I'd like to be surprised. I'd like to say I'm surprised that we've got nobody watching us on YouTube right now, but I'm really not.
I feel like YouTube, I don't go to YouTube for lives personally.
No,
but
no, neither do I. This was more the reason. So on the 17th, the reason you were just on the YouTube side, it didn't show you there. Huh. Interesting. Did you talk? Yeah, I'm on YouTube as well. We're live streaming on both. People go to Instagram more than YouTube. Yeah. You don't know how to use YouTube? Oh, wait, 1 minute. Here we go. We're starting. We're live, guys.
Oh my gosh, it's happening.
It's time.
No handshake.
No handshake, and there you have Governor Walz.
No handshake.
Taking some notes. J.D. Vance doing the same as our colleagues.
And they were shaking hands before the cameras came.
That's right.
Rude.
Well, we have the vice presidential debate coming up in a moment. It will be moderated by our own Norah O'Donnell and Margaret Brennan. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz take the stage. Well, they've taken the stage, so stick with us here and join us also on our streaming channel,
Did we just miss it?
News 24/7, for exclusive content you won't see anywhere else.
Is it just going right back to
joining
commercial? Or is it going in? I don't know. Oh, they did? Okay. I don't know why they said no handshake. Oh yeah, now I see you, Kiva. Now it says 1 viewer. Hey, Garpu. Is it weird that you're nervous about it? No, it's not weird that you're nervous about it.
Tonight, with just over a month to go until Election Day, the first and only meeting between the two men who hope to become Vice President of the United States. Democratic Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota and Republican Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio.
Now, this is likely the final debate of this election cycle, and voting is already underway in 20 states.
Thanks for the heart.
CBS News polling shows this remains a race either presidential candidate could win. The CBS News vice presidential debate starts now.
Fight for every single vote, and we're going to take this country back.
And we are ready to continue to build the future together.
Don't put my home state with
We're going to turn this
Vance.
whole
I'm
country
sorry.
red with President Donald J. Trump's leadership.
You know,
So
it's
are
at
you
the end of
nervous?
this little journey, Kamala Harris
Ed?
is the next president of the United States.
Very, but
This
I feel
is
like
a
it doesn't
CBS
take much
News
to look
special,
good
live
next to
from
JD
CBS
Vance,
News
honestly.
headquarters in New
I really
York.
don't.
America
And
decides.
genuinely, I
The
feel like he's
vice
just such a
presidential
decent
debate.
human, and that should shine through.
Yes, this
We'll
is the
see.
debate.
Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for joining us for tonight's CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. We want to welcome our viewers on CBS, on other networks here in the U.S. and around the world. We have a consequential night ahead, and our focus is the issues that matter to you, the voter. Let's introduce the candidates. Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim
Hey,
Walz
Eleanor.
and Ohio's
We have 3
Republican
people
Senator
watching this on
JD
YouTube now.
Vance
Look at
tonight,
that.
meeting for the first time.
I'm
Well,
Margaret
now they
Brennan.
shook
In
hands.
order to have a
There we go.
thoughtful and civil debate, these are the rules that both
This
campaigns
is so
have agreed
awkward
to.
looking.
Questions will be directed at one candidate.
So
who will have
awkward
2 minutes to
looking.
respond. The other candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal. Then each candidate will get another minute to make further points, with an additional 1 minute
Can I pull
each
this
at the
up?
discretion of the moderator. The primary role of the moderators is to facilitate the debate between the candidates, enforce the rules, and provide the candidates with the opportunity to fact-check claims made by each other.
Hello?
CBS
Hi,
News
guys.
reserves the right to mute the candidates' microphones
like an
to
SNL
maintain
set. It kinda
decorum.
does.
We have not shared the questions or topics
Oh,
with
man.
the campaigns.
Guys, my brother's in the
stage
chat.
is set. Governor, Senator,
In
thank
you-
you
in
for
YouTube.
joining us.
It's weird.
Let's get started. Tonight, our country is facing several unfolding crises. The Middle East is on the brink of war. Americans are suffering from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene. And now a labor strike as 25,000 dock workers from Maine to Texas
So they
are picketing.
technically have
We're gonna begin
muting
tonight
power, but
with
they're
the Middle
not
East.
going to
Margaret.
use it unless they
Thank you,
need
Nora.
to.
Earlier
Yes, the one
today,
you live
Iran
with,
launched its
Karpu.
largest attack yet on Israel.
There's
but
not an
that
audience,
attack
right?
failed.
There is not an
thanks
audience.
to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Governor Walz, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. And thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners.
He looks nervous.
Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in
That's the
Gaza.
question. Yeah, it's a really
But
weird first
the
question.
expansion of Israel and its proxies
really
is an
weird first
absolute
question.
fundamental
I was not
necessity for
expecting
the
that.
United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago. A nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest
I'm
to Donald
interested to
Trump
see. I'm interested to
that
see how
understand
JD is going
dangerous he is
to
when the world
respond.
is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense
I don't know why they
and
started with that
his
question.
national security advisors
It's a
said he should
really
be nowhere
bad
near the
first
White
question.
House. Now, the person closest to them,
That might mean it can only get better.
Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris,
I mean,
is we've
Vance
seen
is looking
steady
at him.
leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together.
Yeah, you can tell he's calming down a
Understanding
bit.
That our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, When we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the Vice President said today, we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Hold on, I'll pull it up.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working class family. My mother required food assistance.
What does this have to do with the question?
Required Social Security help to raise me.
What does this have to do with the question?
Addiction for a big chunk
He's
of my
doing the thing that they kept criticizing Kamala for doing.
On the GI Bill after I
He's
enlisted
doing
in the
the
Marine
thing
Corps and
that
served in
we
Iraq.
criticized Trump
here
for.
Asking to be your vice president.
Not
with
answering the
extraordinary
freaking
gratitude for this country,
question.
for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies and, God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
What was the question? KOA, the question was about
do you care to respond to any of the
a preemptive strike on Iran.
Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program.
None of us thought this question was going to be part of it. It didn't even make it onto our friggin' bingo card.
Because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted. Because
he had the concept of an answer.
Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches. Look, our allies understand that Donald Trump is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible.
Is that a fact check?
Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate.
Kamala Harris didn't remove the thing from Iran.
Secure. Now, we talk about what the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now.
Well, they're just not supposed to fact check, Steve.
Ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate.
That's
Governor
the point.
Walz
They're not
up.
supposed to.
But when did Iran
release
and
the
Hamas
hounds?
And their
We got
Israel?
protect the cats and dogs,
the
guys.
administration of Kamala Harris. So
I'm
Governor
glad
Walz
they're
can
fact
criticize
checking.
Donald Trump's tweets.
Oh, me too.
But effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
Oh, yeah?
Gentlemen,
Tell the
we have a
people
lot
of
to
Yemen
get to.
that.
Nora?
Margaret, thank you. Let's turn now
Tell
to
the
Hurricane
people of
Helene.
Yemen
The
that there was
storm
no
could become one of the deadliest
war
on
under
record. More than
Donald Trump.
160 people are dead
Golly.
and hundreds more are missing. Scientists say climate change makes these hurricanes larger, stronger,
Climate
and more
change?
deadly because
What are
of the
these
historic
questions?
rainfall.
Our bingo
Senator
card's
Vance,
not going to be
according
checked
to
at all
CBS
at
News
this
polling,
rate.
7 in 10 Americans and
Gotta
more
get
than
at least one
60%
weird.
of Republicans under the age of 45
Did we
favor
get?
the
Yeah, we
US
got to get a
taking
weird.
steps
We
to
haven't
try
had a
and
weird
reduce
yet, though,
climate
right?
change. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce
When did that
the impact
start
of
again?
climate change?
What does that
I'll
have
give you
to
2
do with
minutes.
anything?
Sure. So first of all, let's start with the
Donald
hurricane,
Trump
because it's an
gave Saudi
unbelievable,
Arabia
unspeakable human
billions
tragedy. I
of
just saw
dollars
today,
worth
actually, a
of
photograph
bombs
of 2 grandparents on a roof with a 6-year-old
for them to
child, and it was the last
use
photograph
against
ever taken
Yemen.
of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure Governor Walz joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible, and then, of course, afterwards, to help the people in those communities rebuild. I mean, these are communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally in Appalachia, all across the Southeast. They need their government to do their job, and I commit that when Donald Trump is president again, the government will put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster. Now, Nora, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say, Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true.
All of it?
Just for the sake
No.
of argument, so
A
we're
lot
not
of it?
arguing about weird
Yes.
science. Let's just say that's true. Well,
Let's
if you
just say
believe
that's
that, what would you want to do? The answer is
Weird
that you'd want to
science.
reshore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the
It's not
United
the
States
type
of
of weird
America
we're
because
looking
we're the
for.
cleanest
Did he say
economy
weird
in the entire
science?
world. What
He
have
said weird
Kamala Harris's
science.
policies actually led to?
I don't know, is that
More energy
weird?
production in China,
that count?
more manufacturing overseas, more
Science can be
doing
weird.
business in some of the dirtiest parts of the entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount of carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we actually care about getting cleaner air and cleaner water, the best thing to do is to double down and invest in American workers and the American people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris has done exactly the opposite.
What the heck
Governor
is
Walz,
he
you have 2
talking
minutes to
about?
respond.
Well, we got close to an agreement because all those things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane. And my heart goes out to the folks that are down there in contact with the governors. I serve as co-chair of the Council of Governors as we work together on these emergency managements. Governors know no partisanship. They work
You
together
understood?
to all of the
I'm
governors
being
and
biased.
the emergency responders
Yes.
on the ground.
Yes, I am,
Those
other.
happen on the front end. The federal government
Nowhere
comes in,
have I
makes sure
said that
they're
I
there
am an
that we recover,
unbiased-
but we're still in that
that
phase
I am
where
an
we need to make
unbiased
sure that
person.
they're staying there, staying focused. Now, look, coming back to the climate change issue, there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen.
Welcome
Senator
to my
Vance has said
channel,
that there's a climate
where I
problem in
am
the past.
biased.
Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in
See the hat?
global history
Bias.
that we've seen in
That's
the
what it
Inflation
says.
Reduction Act has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country.
It just means
the largest solar
Vance-
manufacturing plant
Walz has to
in North
fact check.
America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue
does
to move
JD's
forward
makeup? I
that
don't
climate
know.
change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what
Yes.
this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's
Yes.
what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Yes.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has
At least
called
Vance is
climate
looking at
change a
walls.
hoax.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
I'll give him that.
Solid.
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's
We
not what they're doing.
produce more
So
than
clearly,
we
Kamala
ever
Harris
have
herself
in our
doesn't
entire
believe her own rhetoric on this.
life.
If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now, something Governor Walz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. And I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States of America. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy
course he's
production.
making up
We haven't built a
numbers.
nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years.
Senator.
Natural gas,
That's
we've got to
because
invest more
nobody
in it.
wants a
Kamala
nuclear
Harris has done the
facility near
opposite.
them.
That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator,
worse by
your
the
time
climate.
is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil. But the folks know, and like I said again, these are not liberal folks. These are not folks that are Green New Deal folks. These are farmers that have been drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our number one export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota,
it doesn't matter
we're
if it
starting
is
to
the cleanest
weatherproof
and
some of
best
these things.
option.
The infrastructure
If you
law
can't
that was
get
passed
anyone
allows
willing
us to think
to
about
have
mitigation in
a
the future.
nuclear plant
How do we
built
make sure
near
we're
them,
protecting by
you're
burying
not
our
getting
power lines? How do we
anything.
make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing
I never
more
said
and more
nuclear
of?
wasn't
But
clean.
to call it a hoax and to take the oil company
No one
executives
wants a
to
nuclear
Mar-a-Lago,
plant near them.
say, give me money for my campaign and I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter about that, and an all-above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border
Vance lived next to a
consistently
plant.
ranks as one of the top issues for American voters. Senator Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their
This'll be
children who
interesting.
were born on U.S. soil? You have 2
Don't
minutes.
even want to.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive
she
orders
didn't.
suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean.
Oh my gosh.
I
If he
don't
brings
want
up
people who are
opioid
struggling
addiction
with
and his
addiction
mother
to be
one more
deprived
time,
of their
I might
second chance
scream.
because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement
did he
Donald
say
Trump's
illegal
border
immigrants?
policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations.
said illegal
and that gets me
immigrants,
to your
right?
point, Margaret, about what do we
He said
actually
illegal
do?
so.
immigrants.
So we've got 20, 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country.
Oh, yeah, illegal
what do we
aliens
do with
is
them?
the
I think
same.
the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants.
Even
About
worse.
1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border
Oh, he said
illegally.
Minnesota.
I think you start
I
with
forgot. We got
deportations
Minnesota.
on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum
Undocumented
wage in our
immigrants
own
aren't
country. And by the way,
undercutting.
that'll be really
They're
good
doing
for
the
our
jobs
workers who
that
just wanna
nobody
earn
wants
a fair
to
wage
do.
for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about
Hey,
family
Bills?
separation.
Bills, I got
right now,
I got something
in this
for you.
country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has affected in laws. Some of them have been sent back to their families. Some
Sorry,
of them have been
I had to
used
do
as
that,
drug
guys.
trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember, when she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back
No,
to
he
Donald
didn't
Trump's border
answer it.
policies. I wish
Of
that she would
course
do
he
that.
didn't.
It would be good for all of
Because
us.
it's
I said
horrible.
Governor, do you care to respond to any of the specific allegations, including that the vice president is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules, among other things regarding children?
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about this, about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths
course
in our
Vance has
nation's
zero
history.
idea what he's talking
30%
about.
decrease in Ohio.
Did he say
There's
border
still
bill?
more work
We'll
to
say
do.
they said
But
border
let's
bill.
go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of the largest state and a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this, and that is the United States Congress. That's
You're
the
right.
Border Patrol
Most of
agents.
us want to
That's
solve
the Chamber
this.
of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest
Telling on
bill
people who blocked
on
the border bill.
immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by a conservative
You've never
senator
been to
from
San
Oklahoma,
Francisco,
James Langford. I know him. He's super
S-star.
conservative, but he's
You
a
don't know
man
what
of
you're
principle.
talking
Wants to
about.
get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents. Detection for drugs. DOJ money to speed up these the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this,
oh my
Donald Trump
gosh.
said no. Told them
Claire,
to vote against it
the
because
most
it gives him a
conservative
campaign issue. It gives him
senator
what would Donald
in
Trump
the
talk about
entire
if we actually did
Congress
some of these
made
things? And
the
they need
bill.
to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive
Saying
branch.
what else was
So
in the
look,
bill
we have the options
is
to do this.
absolutely
Donald Trump had 4 years. He had
short-sighted
4 years
and
to do
wrong.
this, and he promised
Senator
America how
Langford-
easy
And there
it
was
would
the
be.
solo
I'll build
border
you a
bill.
big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it.
Yeah, it was
Less than
just the
2%
border
of
bill.
that wall got built,
It was
and Mexico didn't
completely
pay a
solo.
dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling them what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable to be laughable. So that's where we're at. Pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, the question was, will you separate parents from their children, even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules, and it is a disgrace.
No.
And it has to stop. Look, I think what
Adults,
Tim said just
Americans
doesn't
are
pass
the drug
smell test.
mules.
For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policy. She did exactly that. We had a record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country. And now that she's running
No,
for
we're
president,
catching
or
a
a few
record
months
number of
before,
fentanyl.
she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president again.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary, but the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And
They
we
haven't
saw
talked
this.
about
And
Asheville.
Senator Vance,
Did
and
they
it
talk about
surprises me
Asheville?
on this, talking about and saying,
I mean,
will
they
create
talked about it a
stories
little
to bring
bit
attention to this.
in the sense of
That vilified a
like
large
they
number
both
of
kind of
people who were here
mentioned it in the
legally
beginning
the
of their
community
first, but it was never a
Springfield.
question.
The Republican governor said, it's not true, don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes
Yeah,
a talking
but that's not
point
the
like
right
this,
weird.
we dehumanize and
Did he say
villainize
Springfield?
other human beings.
Tim,
Governor,
He
your
talked
time is
about
up.
it, at
Senator,
least.
I'll give you 1 minute, but let me just ask you the question first. The governor has made the point, and I think as a sitting lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings and any funding. So you have said repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our borders are. Kamala Harris has been.
That is not
and
the
it's actually
majority.
heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents, they just want to be empowered to do their job.
No,
of course, additional
they
resources
need
would
help.
But most of this
That's
is
the
about
whole
the president and the
freaking
vice
point,
president
people.
empowering our law
JD.
enforcement to say, if you try to come across the border illegally, you've got to stay in Mexico. You've got to go back through proper channels. Now, Governor Walz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You have got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim. And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, you have 1 minute to respond.
Did he really say that?
It is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with it, of blaming migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable.
Thank
but
you.
It becomes a blame. Look, this bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate. I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this, and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans. They simply want order to it. This bill does it. It's funded. It's supported by the people who do it. And it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number
No,
of
that's how he
Haitian
talks,
migrants
Juniper.
who have
He's
legal
not getting
status,
upset.
temporary protected status.
Well,
Nora?
Margaret, but
Thank you. Senator, we have so much to get to.
Margaret,
Thank
I
you,
think it's
Nora.
important
We're
because
gonna turn now to the
debate-
economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that
The
you guys weren't
economy,
going to
we're-
fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10
They
years.
can
That
mute
is
him.
the
Senator.
facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by
Thank
our
you,
own
Mute
Senator,
him.
for
leadership.
describing the legal
And
process.
Kamala-
We
and
have
Kamala
so much
Harris
to get
opened up
to,
that-
Senator.
Mute him.
Those
We have
laws
so
have been on
much-
the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
we
CBP
want to
One
have,
app has not been on the books since 1990.
Thank you. Thank you.
gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Nora?
Thank you, Margaret. The economy is a top concern
so
for
childish.
voters. Each of your campaigns has released an economic plan, so let's talk about the
I
specifics.
don't think you
Governor
understand,
Walz,
Margaret.
Vice President Harris
I'm a
unveiled
U.S.
plan
senator.
that includes billions in tax credits for manufacturing, housing, and a renewed child tax
Thanks
credit.
to the ICU,
The Wharton
Don.
School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we
Look,
come from.
he's answering
we
the
both
question.
grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and
maybe.
forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be
Hopefully.
listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as the housing goes, I've seen it in Minnesota.
Is he answering it
12% more houses
perfectly?
in Minneapolis. No. Prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class. $6,000 tax credit. We have one in Minnesota. Reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then getting businesses off the ground. The law as it stands right now is $5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago, said, you're rich as hell, I'm going to give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was
definitely getting more confident.
$8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it, it would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do, we'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best, more people are participating in it, and folks have the things that they need.
Senator, I want to give you a moment to respond on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan and says it would increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion.
Where are we going?
My question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning
Which
the
direction?
deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer, a lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do. And some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies. And what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%, open the American southern border and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now. Not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plans, and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense and they don't have wisdom.
So common sense is tariffing everything?
Delivered the highest take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax
We're still in the Trump
is that
tax
a lot
plan.
of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle-class and working-class Americans. It was passed in 2017, and you saw an American
He's literally not
boom
talked about the
unlike we've
economy at
seen
all.
in a
His
generation
economic
in this
plan at
country.
all.
That is a record that I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense wisdom so that you can afford to live
the question?
the American
How
dream again. I
is
know a lot
Trump's
of you are struggling.
economic plan going to actually help when economists are saying that it's going to add $5 trillion to the deficit?
What has Kamala Harris done for the middle class?
Yeah, well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs closed on that. That was day one. Whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about...
Did he actually mention the Haitians?
I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted.
They didn't. I did.
National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, or whatever. How is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years? And the last year as president. That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts.
Yep.
But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that.
Did get
They said if we
cheaper goods by
shipped our
shipping it
industrial
off
base
to China.
other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald
that the
Trump
lower
had
class
the wisdom
is not
and the courage to say to that
can afford
bipartisan
anything
consensus,
is because
we're
the
not
stuff
doing
moved
it
to
anymore.
China.
We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make
Don't
more
shush
of our own
me.
stuff. And
This
this
is
isn't
my
just an economic
channel.
issue.
You
And I've
don't
got
like
3
it, go
beautiful little
somewhere
kids at
else.
home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very
Thank you for
much.
the
I hope they're in
ICU.
bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop, and we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Senator, your time is up. Governor Walz, can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
Well, if you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look,
I seem sensitive.
I'm a union guy
Okay.
on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I
passionate.
understand that, look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China.
I wouldn't say anyone's
so
winning.
the rhetoric
I mean,
is good. Much of what the
yes,
senator
I'm
said
biased.
right
I
there,
think
I'm in
Walz
agreement
is
with him
doing
on
a little
this.
bit better
I
only
watched
because
it
he's
happen
answering
too. I watched
questions
it in
more,
my
but
communities, and we talked about
it's
that.
been a
But
wash.
we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to
unions.
work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that are venture
would
capital
disagree
in
that
some
Vance is
cases,
doing
putting
better.
money into companies that were overseas.
Vance hasn't actually
We're in
answered
agreement that we
one
bring those
question.
home. The
better.
issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more
Vance
manufacturing
is
jobs just
Vance
out
is
of the
doing
IRA.
better
May I respond to that?
Yes.
than
So
Trump
appreciate
did.
that. So,
But that's
if
not
you
saying
notice, what
much.
Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics
that's a
show
gross
that he
generalization.
did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did.
Oh my
And then you simultaneously
gosh.
got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable
No.
for American citizens. I was
A
raised by a
global
woman who
pandemic
would sometimes
made it
go into medical
expensive.
debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that
Whack-a-mole
you
was
need to
unexpected.
afford. We can
Yeah.
do so
Welcome to
much better.
weird.
To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to
By
common
adding
sense economic
tariffs?
principles.
I
Okay,
hope we have
buddy.
a conversation on health care then.
Senator, Governor.
Please.
Thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many topics. But right now, I want to talk about
Tim looks so
personal
good.
qualifications.
What was
the
that?
vice president is often the last
Tim's just
voice
so
the
genuine.
president hears
Oh, yeah.
before making
Good man vibes.
consequential decisions.
Yep.
We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor Walz,
Does he not
you
realize
said you
that
were
Trump
in
started out
Hong
with
Kong
Obama's
during
economy?
the deadly
Yeah.
Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of
He
1989.
totally benefited from
But Minnesota
Obama's
Public
economy.
Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year.
Do I think that tariffs are on U.S.?
Can you
I think
explain
if
that
we tariff other
discrepancy?
countries,
Yeah.
Well, and to the folks out there who
American
get at the top of
companies
this,
pay
look,
those tariffs,
I grew up
not
in small
the other
rural
people.
Nebraska.
That's how
town of
tariffs work.
400, Town that you rode your
In the
bike with
middle
your
and
buddies till
lower
the street lights
class
come on, and I'm
who
proud of that
consume
service.
from those
I
companies
joined the
are
National
going
Guard
to
at 17,
feel the burden.
worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become
Nebraska.
a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers,
Did you say
and we would
National
go
Guard?
back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. They look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people.
Thanks, Don.
Working on things like farm bills that we got done,
That
working
is
on
exactly
veterans
how
benefits.
tariffs work.
And then the people
And
of
if you
Minnesota
think that's not how
were
tariffs
able
work,
to elect me to governor
you
twice.
need to look up how
So
tariffs
look,
work.
My commitment has been from the
Because
beginning
you obviously don't know.
to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything, many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be
I'm sure he's been to China.
praising Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is.
It's
My
China.
commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to
Naderade,
follow
this is a
up on
VP
that,
debate,
the question was,
not,
can you
not a presidential
explain
debate.
the
No, just-
discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Thank you, Governor. Senator Vance, in 2016, you called your running
I don't
mate
think
Donald
anyone's
Trump
winning.
unfit for the nation's highest office, and you said he could be America's Hitler. I know you've said, you've been
Needs
asked
to
many
talk
times, and
only
you've
about
said
the
you regret
economy.
those
He's answering the
comments
questions he's
and
asked.
explained you then voted for Donald Trump in 2020. But the Washington Post reported new messages last week in which you also disparaged Trump's economic record while he was president, writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear and not just the advice he wants to hear? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on.
He didn't.
And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you
On
get
any of
something
it.
wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out the messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration the
Being
first round
consistent?
if
That's why you said you're a
Congress was
never Trump
doing
guy?
its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States Senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the Republican Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. And I want to talk about this tariff
like
issue
right
in
now
particular,
when
Margaret,
Republicans
because
are so
Tim
obsessed
just
with impeaching
accused this
Biden
of being
that they're
a
not
national
governing?
sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're probably surprised to hear me
Least
praising Joe
productive
Biden, but
Congress.
the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the
He does
Biden
not have a
administration,
point.
it's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says, you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
Senator, your time is up. Nora?
Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz, after Roe versus Wade was overturned, you signed a bill into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion.
Minnesota.
Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade.
Yeah, this is a
52 years of
classically
personal autonomy.
pretty boring.
And then he tells us, oh,
debate.
send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing.
In comparison.
Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy.
Bennett?
She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duval, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when got asked about that, Senator Vance said 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not where, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about health care. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in health care for a reason. We trust women, we trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restrictive state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography? There's a very real chance had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire
let's see
world.
how he pulls
My
away
question
from this
is,
one.
why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did when I was running for Senate in 2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, you know, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing pro-family policies, making child care more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible, because we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor, your response.
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the implications are to not be that.
Mind your own damn
women
business.
having miscarriages.
Come on.
Women not getting the care. Physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that too. We know that the options need to be available, and we make that true. We also make it, we're a top 3 state for the best place to raise children. But these two things, to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator?
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me, but as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think, whether you're pro-choice or pro-abortion, that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby and pro-family. But please.
Yes, Governor, please respond.
Look, this is one where there's always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point, that's not it at all.
What was I wrong about, Governor? Please tell me, what was I wrong about?
That is not the way the law is written. Look, I've given
But how?
I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, getting engaged, that's been misread, and it was fact-checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation of these guys to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this, just mind your own business on this. Things work best when Roe versus Wade was in place. When we do a restoration of Roe, that works best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals, they get early childhood education, they get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget. Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on, and we're going to be right back with much more of the CBS News vice presidential debate in just a moment.
Wow, so much more civil.
So much more civil. They actually talk to each other.
I'm actually kind
It's
of
weird.
I'm impressed.
I mean,
I'm not saying that I'm impressed with JD Vance.
No, I'm not impressed with his answers at all.
Anyone in contrast with Donald Trump is gonna look kind of good.
Yeah, I mean, he did better in the sense of every other word coming out of his mouth was not a lie. And he's at least avoiding bringing up, we still got what? Technically, we still got 35 minutes. So it could still come up, but JD is not amazing. Oh my gosh.
Amazing's a big old stretch, okay?
Again, when you're comparing how Donald, like, compared to how Donald did, JD is doing well. But in terms of actually answering questions, he is not. He actually has not answered many of them.
He's really good at diverting without anyone noticing.
He's very good at diverting. He's very good at diverting.
The people who don't notice.
No, he hasn't answered like any of the questions. He has talked about issues generally that were asked, but when actually asked the questions, he has not actually answered them. Now, again, I will agree. There were a couple of them that I feel that Tim could have gone in more in depth in, but you're not. This is a debate. This is a debate where you get 2 minutes and then 1 minute. If you think you're going to get in-depth answers, that's not going to happen ever. He has concepts of answers. What? None of them. When you say what questions, the answer is none. It's not a which, it's a none.
I also just have to add the fact that anyone is still using the term illegal alien is so dehumanizing and and I just can't. Being in a party that just accepts that as the norm is crazy.
A lot of his comments are again, his statement, they were saying, someone was mentioning it on YouTube, the statement he made, he goes, I didn't vote for a national ban, I just voted for banning things after a certain point nationally. Like, he literally said that he didn't say something, but he did. Like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh. What happened to his eyeliner? I don't know.
They chose different lighting for him.
They chose different lighting? Yeah. Vance is losing?
I'm giving my... Sorry, no, you go.
Oh, I was just going to... I forget what I was going to say. What were you going to say?
I was going to give myself a shout out and say that I'm almost at 10K, so if you want to follow me, my TikTok is Eden's TikTok.
This is Eden. Her TikTok is Eden's TikTok.
2 Ds. It's like Eden, but 2 Ds.
She has joined as co-host of my podcast. If you like podcasts, we have a podcast, a more perfect podcast. You should check it out. All right, we're back.
Gun violence epidemic.
Yep.
The leading cause of death for children and teens in America is by firearms. Senator Vance, you oppose most gun legislation that Democrats claim would curb gun violence. You oppose red flag gun laws and legislation to ban certain semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you, earlier this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Do you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, Nora, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I want to just sort of speak as a father of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff. And we do have to do better. And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just, how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90% in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartel. So that number, the amount of illegal guns in our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers, because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer. And I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents, and they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead, and they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, and here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough when we know there are things that worked. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. Amen. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there,
much better than Vance
do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go? When we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills. They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that shouldn't be that difficult.
Amen.
You can still keep your firearms, and we can make a difference. We have to. If you're listening tonight, this breaks your heart.
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting, and I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's doing okay. Christ have mercy. It is awful. And I appreciate what Tim said, actually, about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the, frankly, weird differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland. Okay, first of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse, or mental health substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think it's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think at our schools we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen
Amen.
it. Look, the NRA, I was an NRA
Things
guy for a
change.
long time. They used to teach gun
Amazing.
safety. I'm
You
of an
learn
age
more.
where my shotgun
And
was
you
in my
decide
car
it's
so I could pheasant
not
hunt
right.
after football practice. That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is talking about cities and where it's at. The number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves. And so we have, and we should look at all of the issues. Making sure folks have health care and all that, but I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing
Did he
mental
say
health,
weird?
just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing
I
is we
believe you
start
guys.
looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns, and there are things that you can do about it. But I do think that this is one, and I think this is a healthy
gonna be
conversation.
hard.
I
don't
think
think
there's a
we're gonna get
capacity
it.
to find solutions on this that work, protect Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
Gentlemen, thank you. Margaret?
Stay-at-home
Nora.
mom probably won't say.
Let's
cats
turn now
probably
to the
won't
top
say, gender
contributor
surgeries
to
probably won't say.
inflation, the high cost of housing and
I'm gonna
rent.
say Ukraine.
There's
Opportunity
a shortage of
economy
more
might
than
come
4
up.
million homes in the United
talking about the
States,
homes.
and that contributes to the high housing prices. Governor Walz, the Harris campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices
How much you want to bet
higher?
Trump is angry
No, it's not
and
handing out. We
Vance
have,
is
first, let me
agreeing
say this. This issue
with
of housing,
Walz.
and I think those of you listening on
Being
this, the problem
respectful.
we've had is that we've got a lot of folks that
Vance
see
is not
housing as another commodity.
cooking
It can be
with
bought
Walz.
up,
Oh my
it can be
gosh.
shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the vice president is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, one of the, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we've put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money.
Amen.
And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in.
And
but we
owning a
can't
house
blame
means you spend money because you
immigrants
need to
for the
take
only
care of
reason.
that
That's
house.
not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that base.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising, and what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with. But the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics.
No,
she is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change the equation for American citizens if you lower energy prices? As Donald Trump says, drill, baby, drill. One of the biggest drivers of housing costs, aside from illegal immigration, is, think about it. If a truck driver's paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods, too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer?
Can I have it?
Where, Governor, we will get to you in a moment. But Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, I do want to let you respond to the allegation that the vice president is letting in
Well, of course, that's not true. And again, you have the facts. I guess we agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That, look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office. But it's, again, blaming and not trying to find the solution. I was going to ask, though, on this question, are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land? And I think when people hear federal lands, these are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do. There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about our national parks and our federal lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us.
Amen.
But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like, there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I think there's better ways to do this. We've seen it in Minnesota. We're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists.
Not being lived in.
Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor, your time is up. But Senator, on that point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Well, there's a Federal Reserve study that we're happy to share after the debate. We'll put it up on social media, actually, that really drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers. But we increasingly have a federal administration that makes it harder to develop our resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail for not doing everything exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of people who would love to build homes who aren't able to build homes. I actually agree with Tim Walz. We should get out of this idea of housing as a commodity. But the thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. That in some cases, many of those are local.
Just so
many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations,
who would not choose
people
that
think
over...
they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen, We have a lot to get to. You're passionate about the housing crisis. I can tell.
We're going to go
But Nora?
past 10:30.
Thank you.
There's
One
no
of the top
way this is
problems
ending
facing
at
Americans
10:30.
is the high cost of health care. Senator Vance, at the last presidential debate, former President Trump was asked about replacing the Affordable Care Act. In response, he said, "I have concepts of a plan." Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain how that would work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay
Why
more?
is he smiling?
I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, of course,
he just
we're going to
plasters
cover
that
Americans with
creepy
pre-existing
smile on.
conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care. I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. Look, it's very simple common sense. I think as Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress, you're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs fell in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%. He introduced pricing transparency. Think about healthcare. You go into a hospital, you try to buy something, and nobody knows what it actually costs. That price transparency will actually give American consumers a little bit more choice and will also drive down costs. And we talked about, the reinsurance regulations is what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill, but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously until Donald Trump came along.
I forgot what the question was.
I think this is an important point about President Trump. Of course, you don't have to agree with everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done. But when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and healthcare costs, Donald Trump could have destroyed the program. Instead,
he tried to destroy the
program way to
60
ensure that Americans had access to affordable care. It's not perfect, of course, and there's so much more that we can do. But I think that Donald Trump has earned the right to put in place some better healthcare policies. He's earned it because he did it successfully the first time.
Governor?
All right, here's where being an old
Wait,
guy
what?
gives you some history.
I don't know.
I was there at the creation of the ACA. And the reason it was so important is I come from a major healthcare state, home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those. We understand healthcare. It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality of healthcare. And so what I know is under Kamala Harris, more people are covered than they have before. And those of you listening, this is critical to you. Now, Donald Trump all of a sudden wants to go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to repeal Obamacare. On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but lost at the Supreme Court. And he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that bill.
Amen.
Now, fast forward, what that means to you is you lose your pre-existing conditions. If you're sitting at home and you got asthma, too bad. If you're a woman, probably not. Broke
So
your
you're asking
foot
who I'm
during
voting
football,
for?
might kick you out.
Can you not see
Your
my
kids
hat?
get kicked out when they're 26. Kamala Harris negotiated drug prices for the first time with Medicare. We have 10 drugs that will come online, the most common ones that'll be there. But look, this issue, and when Donald Trump said, I've got a concept of a plan, it cracked me up as a fourth grade teacher because my kids would have never given me that. But what Senator Vance just explained might be worse than a concept, because what he explained is pre-Obamacare. And I'll make this as simple as possible because I have done this for a long time. What they're saying is,
Way longer than
if
J.D.
you're
Vance
healthy,
has.
why should you be paying more? So what they're going to do is let insurance companies pick who they insure, because guess what happens? You pay your premium, it's not much. They figure they're not going to have to pay out to you. But those of you a little older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance the ACA.
Governor, thank you. Senator, you have not yet explained how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions or laid out that plan.
That would be boring.
Well, look, we currently have laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place, but we also want to make the health insurance marketplace function a little bit better. Now, what Governor Walz just said is actually not true. A lot of what happened and the reason that Obamacare was crushing under its own weight is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again,
how did he do that?
Something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of these terrible consequences are going to ensue. But in reality, Donald Trump was president, inflation was low, take-home pay was higher, and he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership.
False.
He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way and get results, not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the question about this of young people or whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans should be free to do this. Well, then what happens is... So you think the individual mandate's a good idea? I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people know that they need to be on health care. People expect it to be there. And when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market, when we help people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I hear people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying health care once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
Thank you. Margaret?
Can I address that?
I apologize. We're out of time. We have a number of subjects to discuss. Margaret?
Let's talk about families in America. There is a child care crisis in this country, and the United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world without a national paid leave program for new parents. Governor Walz, you've said that if Democrats win both the White House and Congress, this is a day one priority for you. How long should employers be required to pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's negotiable, and that's what Congress works. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. Those companies provide paid family and medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family and medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start, the family works better, we stay in their employers, we get more consistency in that. So Kamala Harris has made it a priority. We implemented it in Minnesota and we see growth. That's how you become a pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue, those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some places, that means no paycheck because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical leave program, and I will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at both the supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or our parents to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business and then to make sure that folks are able to pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota, and I'm still telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family and medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our families, and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, do you support a national paid leave program? And if so, For how long should employers be mandated to pay their employees while they are home taking care of their newborn? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first of all, Margaret, a number of my Republican colleagues and some Democrats, too, have worked on this issue. And I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who is an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful kids, but is also a very, very brilliant corporate litigator. And I'm so proud of her. But being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinarily difficult. And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company. But the cultural pressure on young families and especially young women, I think makes it really hard for people to choose the family model they want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model that makes choice possible. And I think this is a very important substantive difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's approach. I mean, look, if you look at the federal programs that we have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of childcare model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with childcare. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your neighborhood to provide childcare in the way that makes the most sense. You don't get access to any of these federal monies. We want to promote choice in how we deliver family care and how we promote childcare because, look, it is unacceptable. And, you know, of course, Tim and I have been on the campaign trail a lot the past 7 or 8 weeks. And one of the biggest complaints I hear from young families is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work or taking care of their kids.
Whether to have a kid or not.
That is an incredible burden to put on American families.
He wants
we're the
choice.
only country that does it.
Guys, he wants choice. He's pro-choice.
Senator, thank you. You have also said,
Senator
man is pro-choice.
Many things about the American
Don't
family.
even clip that.
The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on child care as they do on housing each month. So I want to get your thoughts on this. President Trump recently said, as much as child care is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that we're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas.
No,
and
you are not
countries
penalizing
who
anybody.
employ slave laborers and then ship their
The
products back
companies
into our
in
country
America
and undercut the wages of
pay
American
the tariffs,
workers. It's the
not
heart of the Donald Trump
people
economic plan.
outside of
Cut
the United
taxes for
States.
American workers and American families. Cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America.
Tariffs
but penalize
cost
companies
United
and
States
countries that are
companies more
shipping
money.
jobs overseas. That's the heart of the economic proposal.
And
And I
passes
think
it
what
on
President
to
Trump
the
is saying is that when we
consumer.
bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family
is how
leave,
tariffs
child
work.
care options
Yes.
that are viable and workable for a lot of American families.
Can you clarify how that will solve the child care shortage?
Well, because
Can you
as Tim
answer the
said, a lot of the
question?
child care shortage is we just don't have enough resources
Oh my
going into the
gosh.
multiple people who could
No,
be
he
providing
can't.
family
He can't
care
answer the
options.
question.
And we're going to have to, unfortunately, look, we're going to have to spend more money. We're going to have to induce more people to want to provide child care options for American families because the reason it's so expensive right now is because you've got way too few people
Way to not
providing this
answer
very
the
essential
question.
service.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz,
Put the blame on
your
someone else.
ticket also has
That
some
always
child
works.
care tax credit proposals. Do you think Congress will agree to the $6,000 credit for newborns and $3,000 credit for
Do we
children
think
over the age of
Congress will?
6?
Depends who's in
as your
Congress. What kind of a
campaign has
question is that?
promised? Is that realistic?
Well, if these members of Congress are listening to anybody, I can tell you, and this is the biggest issue. Everybody listening tonight knows. I mean, I'm sure they were shocked to hear it's not that expensive. And let's be clear, whether it's $5,000 or $6,000, that pays you about 3 or 4 months. Let's be clear of where we're at on this. It's because we got out of an imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying people. I
Your
don't think Senator
face
Vance
is a
and I are that far apart. I'm not opposed to what he's talking about on
Sorry, someone
options.
in
We've
chat
done
said my
scholarship
hat
types
was a
of things.
joke.
I think we need to be open
So
to
I
making the
figured
case.
I'd
But
be
the
the
issue
adult in
here
the
is,
room.
the question you asked is, you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another $4,000 on the family and taking less. So not only do they not get the money to pay for that, they're $4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, Those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with childcare and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy's growing, but we need the workforce.
Truth.
Governor, thank you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy and inflation. After the 2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results.
Oh, here we go.
Judges, including those appointed by President Trump and other Republican presidents, looked at the evidence and said there was no widespread fraud. The governors of every state in the nation, Republicans and Democrats, certified the 2020 election results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress for January 6th.
How's he gonna
Senator
put
Vance,
this one?
you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president, Donald Trump left the White House, and now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans casting aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens. And it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation. I think that is a much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years.
Bring up cats.
Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by two lifelong blue-collar Democrats.
I know you're not going to, Vance, but Walz can bring up cats.
Of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. Of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind a basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other issues, and that to me is a much bigger threat to democracy than what Donald Trump said when he said that protesters should peacefully protest on January the 6th.
Governor?
I remember hearing her name
enjoyed
during
tonight's
COVID,
debate, and I think there was a lot of commonality here. And I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator.
Me too, man.
There's one though that this one is troubling to me, and I say that because I think we need to tell the story. Donald Trump refused to acknowledge this, and the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up.
He's such a Midwesterner.
I mean, he lost this election, and he said he didn't. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day. Some with the American flag, several later died. And it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state capitol grounds in St. Paul and said, we're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties. The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue, and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, hang Mike Pence. Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter.
Amen.
People hear that. So I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is
Tulsi
over,
Gabbard, a
we need to
lifelong
shake
leader.
hands
Ugh.
this election, and the winner needs to be
think
the
I
winner.
used to
This
like
has
her.
got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Margaret? Senator Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all, it's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We are going to shake hands after this debate and after this election. And of course, I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time. And if we want to say that we need to respect the results of the election, I'm on board. But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, that this is just a problem that Republicans have had, I don't buy that.
Governor.
January 6th was not Facebook ads. And I think a revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand
Only
how we got to
Republicans
this
have
point.
done something like
but
January
the issue
6th.
was that happened.
At least since
Donald Trump can do it. And
the
all
Civil
of us say
War.
there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions. This idea that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something, that's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance, I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement, but this is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the power of government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't wear masks.
Kicking people off Facebook
Fire in a crowded theater.
Yelling
that
fire
is
in a crowded
criticizing
theater?
the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to respond to you.
Yeah. Well, I don't run Facebook. What I do know is I see a candidate
has
out
things
there
called
who
terms of
refused,
service.
and now again, and this I'm pretty shocked by this.
Nothing
he
to
lost
do
the election
with freedom.
This
of
is
speech.
not a
private
debate. It's not.
entity?
It's not anything anywhere other than in Donald Trump's world. Because look, when Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that, because of course that's what we would do. So America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
Governor, your time is up. Thank you, gentlemen. We will be right back with both of our candidates. The CBS News vice presidential debate continues.
Wow. Commercial break number 2.
Commercial break number 2.
Oh my gosh.
Like I said, again, I admit there's biases. I think Walz is doing slightly better. if you asked me in the beginning, I think Walz was struggling to get in his groove. I think, again, I don't think JD Vance has been answering the questions the way he hasn't been answering the questions. And I definitely see the confidence in Walz. Now, do I think Walz is destroying Vance? No, I don't.
But I think that's also because this is like a civil debate.
This is a
and we
real
haven't
debate.
seen that
This is what a debate
in a
used to
while.
be like before Trump came into office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little less spicy than the last ones we've
This is
seen.
a little less spicy.
But
see,
maybe that's nice.
You know, I'd be interested to see, I would be interested. It's an interesting thought. Like, what do we think Walz would have been like if he was debating Trump? Like, he is matching the energy of the person that he's against. I mean, that's what Kamala Harris did, really, was, you know, Trump was throwing out the crazy, and she's like, you're gonna throw out the crazy, I'm gonna go along with it, and this is what I'm gonna do. And Tim's not getting that, so he can't do that.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good look for Tim, you know.
Oh, sure.
Keep it mellow. Stick with the idioms and no ad hominems. And
oh yeah, Walz is definitely
but he's been doing so.
Up. Yeah. So while we're in this break, what do you think has been the most interesting part so far? Like, what's the part that comes to mind when you're thinking about it?
Just like the constant deflection. I mean, I'm not surprised, but it's just this like consistent sorry, I didn't say like a topic, but
no, that's fine.
But it's like the most consistent thing that it feels like the conservatives do constantly. And of course every politician does that to an extent, but you never see anything like it.
Yeah.
Unless it's on the, you know, it's just.
He's definitely, again, he's not answering the questions. That is the hardest part. That is the most frustrating part. They ask very specific questions, and he just talks
and
about
he says
something else completely.
He even says, I'm going to answer the question because you just asked it. And then
like that
not answer the question.
Like that is not what's the term? I'm going to age myself. What do they call it? What do you Gen Z call it when someone says base? Like that's like like that is what is the least someone should do? What's the term?
Oh.
Someone will
literally
know
no idea. Not Gen Z enough, I guess.
You're not Gen Z enough?
Apparently. Falling out of it. I mean, yeah, bare minimum.
Bare minimum.
I don't think that's the Gen Z term.
But like the fact that he said that, it's like he's literally like that should be the bare minimum, is answering the question. But the fact that he had to say it out loud and point it out like he's doing something above and beyond what should be happening in a debate.
Look at me, guys. Just gonna point out
look how good I am. I'm gonna answer the question. I'm gonna point out that I'm answering the question that you asked me. That's
and then
how
I'll
great I
distract
am.
you from the fact that I didn't actually answer it.
All right, we're back.
To the question.
Welcome back to the CBS News vice presidential debate. It is now time for the closing statement. Senator Vance won the virtual coin toss and elected to go last. So, Governor Walz, you are first. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Senator Vance.
Thank
you to CBS News. And most importantly, thank you to all of you. If you're still up and the folks who miss Dancing with Our Stars, I appreciate it. But look, the support of the democracy matters. It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built, from Bernie Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift, and a whole bunch of folks in between there. And they don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country, and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you, that better than it is is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something. Not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now, look, we all know who Donald Trump is. Said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage. And then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Governor Walz, thank you. Senator Vance, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Governor Walz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening.
Even say his last
one of the
name
issues
right.
we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight.
Yeah, how much
and
money
I
do you have
believe,
now?
as a person who wants to be your next vice
Senator
president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies.
False.
I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies.
False.
I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that too has gotten harder with because of Kamala Harris's policies.
False.
Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed.
You've been in politics
She's
for
been
18
the vice
months.
president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems
has no
worse.
Policies.
Now, I believe
the
that we
vice president
have
of
the
the
most
United
beautiful
States.
country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have
can't
the
afford
greatest
food,
country, the most beautiful
but they're
country,
asking
the
me
most
how I'm
incredible
doing.
people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well.
Wait, we need
Please
a new
vote for Donald
direction,
Trump.
but
And
we
whether
need a
you vote for
president
me or
who-
vote for Tim
who's
Walz,
been
I
in
just want to
office
say
already.
I'm so proud to be doing
That
this,
does
and
not
I'm
make
rooting
sense.
for you. God bless
the
you. And good
math
night.
ain't mathin'.
Senator Vance, thank you.
And didn't do
thank
any
you
of the
both
things
for
he said he was
participating in
gonna
the
do.
only vice presidential debate of this election cycle. I'm Margaret Brennan.
And I'm Nora O'Donnell. And a reminder, there are just 35 days until Election Day. Please get out and vote. And for all of us here at CBS News, thank you and good night.
Thank you and good night.
Well, that was incredible.
Look at that. They can actually talk to each other. It's amazing.
Who would have thought?
It's amazing. And watch, the wives are gonna
The first
are gonna
and only
shake
vice
each other's
presidential
hands. I
debate.
bet.
This
Maybe.
election is now complete.
Maybe.
It was a
Yeah,
cordial
they're gonna
debate
shake
of the
each other's
kind that
hands.
people
Look at
mostly
that.
say they want. You notice here the two
Look at
candidates
that.
lingering on the stage. That's
Well,
quite
that
a
is
difference
so
from
pleasant to see.
the,
Haven't seen that in a
presidential
solid
debate in
8
which
years.
was not even sure that Vice President Harris and Donald Trump would shake hands. It was a debate in which the line, "I appreciate what Tim said about Finland," was one of the many ways in which Senator
Well-
Vance agreed with the governor. The governor agreed right back. But that's the tone.
All right. Well, guys, we made it through. We made it through the debate. We made it through the debate. Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about thoughts, but if you have, guys, just everyone, so everyone knows, this is Eden. This is Eden. Say hi, Eden.
Hi, Eden. Sorry, that was stupid.
But wait, I got it.
Hi.
I got you on that one. I'm follow her. I'm making it nice and big. You can't miss it. Follow that
me.
TikTok.
Follow my TikTok.
Follow that TikTok. She is the new co-host of the old podcast but newly named podcast, A More Perfect Podcast. There's a link in bio. Follow the YouTube channel. There's a really big event going on October 17th that you need to be there for. And we're going to be recording an episode about this debate tomorrow, hopefully, and it'll come out pretty soon after. Make sure you register to vote. That's going to be one of the other videos you're going to have something to look forward to. We're going to talk about the different, especially the swing states and registering and all of that stuff. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be going on the channel on TikTok, but also on YouTube. So if you don't follow the YouTube, follow it, because there will be a lot of stuff going on there going soon. Yeah. So I thought it was an okay debate. It was calm. It was respectful. That was nice. Here's the thing though. I don't think that the GOP realized that this is my opinion, like Walz has always been considered one of those people that can go across the aisle and work with anybody, right? We did get a bingo. We got 2 bingos technically. We got 2 of them. Walz has always been the kind of person that can work across the aisle. Your opinion's wrong. I have something to say to you.
A, B, C, D, E, F, you and your mom and your sister and your job and your broke ass car and that's it you call art.
Anyways, Governor Walz has always been one of those people that works across the aisle extremely well. It's one of the things he was well known for. What I saw was an example of what Kamala Harris and her administration can do. Work with someone, talk with someone, potentially find areas of agreement to move forward with people you disagree with. That is something that Walz and Harris have the capability of doing. That is not something that Donald Trump has the capability of doing. That was like the overarching stark understanding that I got from watching it. No, they don't. Okay. And you're obviously someone who is there interacting with these congressmen all the time. Anyways, so that actually in my opinion, from what I just felt watching it, was a little bit of a boost. Again, if you talk about the thing as a whole, I don't think anyone really won or lost. Personally, I think Walz did better than Vance. Was it so significantly better like the presidential debate? No. I think he did a little bit better. Mostly because I think he gave better answers if you take it as a broad, in the broad sense.
Yeah.
But
I
really,
think the worries.
It was close.
Yeah. People just don't really listen to the words all the time, you know? It's more like the tone and the face. And then they're going to say that JD Vance swept the floor with him. You know. I think when you have facts on your side, it makes it easier to win a debate.
Sure.
So.
Sure.
Hot take. I don't know.
Walz did not get destroyed. No one got destroyed. No one got destroyed. I don't think Walz destroyed Vance.
Nah.
I think Walz did slightly better, but no one got destroyed. And if you're coming in and you're saying that anyone got destroyed, you weren't actually listening or paying attention to what was going on. Oh, your bias is showing. I got bias. Where have I said that I don't have bias? Show me where I've ever said I'm not biased. Oh, Grady.
A, B, C, D, E, F, you and your mom and your sister and your job and your broke ass car, and that's it you call art.
What?
No, nobody got destroyed. It was
Pretty civil. It was nice.
It was a civil base debate. Vice
Also-
presidential debates aren't ever going to be. The only purpose of a vice presidential debate is I'm not sure, to be fair. Like, vice presidential debates, like, is the person absolutely batshit crazy if something happens to the president and they need to take over? Like, that's really
Yeah.
that's really
But
the only
leave the
purpose of a
Senate.
VP debate. Let's be fair.
Break ties with your vote. And be there. Be there. Oh, I was gonna say, a bunch of people kept saying how Tim Walz kept bringing up Minnesota, but like that's his microcosm
Yeah.
of the
He is
country.
the governor of
Of
Minnesota.
course, he was gonna keep bringing up
he,
Minnesota.
he wants to run the country in a similar way that he was running Minnesota. You go based on the experience you have. How did it go? I think it was good. It was a decent debate.
Yeah.
It was a real debate between adults. Yeah, I mean, again, I have massive issues with JD Vance. The man admitted to lying, and I'm 100% against someone like him. But I can appreciate how he was respectful during the debate. I can appreciate
The bar
that.
has lowered significantly.
Absolutely.
But it is nice to see.
Absolutely. But him, like, again, him being civil and Walz being civil and having a civil debate made Trump look worse. Because Trump is the one who actually will be making policy. Trump will be the one who will actually be making foreign policy. Trump will be the one that has to be the president.
That's a good point. I wonder if people will, if this is more of a push in Trump's favor or you know, showing the divide a little bit.
Walz,
the contrast.
You will not hear me say that Walz answered every question the way as specifically as I thought he should. Why am I crying? Oh, Tony.
A, B, C, D, E, F, you and your mom and your sister and your job and your broke ass car, and that's it you call art.
Solid.
Trump is 78 years old. Yeah. How do people still like Trump? I have no idea. To be fair, I didn't like him when he came down the escalator in 2015. I would never have considered, as someone who has voted for Republicans and Democrats throughout my entire life, how could you not? He has grifted and stolen and cheated more people out of money than almost any other businessman in the entire planet. And you think that is someone that should be running our country? You're trying so hard. Aw, Matthew.
A, B, C, D, E, F, you and your mom and your sister and your job and your broke ass car, and that's it you call art.
What?
It was a boring old debate.
It was.
Except
Child? You're
is
right.
it really
Donald
that
Trump
boring?
is a child. I agree, Dale. Just
When
like
we
he
have, I
did
feel
for
like
4 years. You did what? What did he do for 4 years? Gave his buddies a lot of money. Beta male, aw, A's.
A, B, C, D, E, F. You and your mom and your sister and your job and your broke ass car, and that's it you call art.
Good thing that song never gets old.
Nope. He did not run
feel
the
like-
country. He ignored people saying that COVID was real for months. Months. Decided to play golf instead. Let her talk.
That's what the people want.
I guess there's someone who,
I've been talking.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying everything I need to say. I was gonna say, I feel like what makes it less boring is when you literally have someone on stage saying again, like out loud, they will not confirm that Trump lost the election. That's insane. That
Mhm.
that's happening. Like, that's not boring. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just can't believe how that man made it to that stage. But we have Trump, so.
Again, nobody crushed. Nobody crushed. This was about as boring a debate as we've seen in 15 years. They definitely like Trump. Who's they? I can confirm. My brother just said I can confirm you've never been not biased since you were a kid. That's true. I've never been not biased. But I'm always willing to listen. As long as the other person's willing to listen. Still on break? No, it's over. Oh, Trump tweeted 24/7? Not surprising. You mean truthed?
Oh, did he? What'd he say? JD Vance was way too respectful.
She's probably did. Oh, you mean Vance was crushing on walls? Again,
Everyone knows I would not support a federal abortion ban under any circumstances. Hey, he said he would in fact veto it because it's up to the states to decide, even though he didn't confirm that he would veto it during the debate.
because he will
Hey,
say
we
whatever.
got a
Wha-
tweet.
We're not,
so-
Bill. We're not going to sit here and tell you our ages. I don't know why you're obsessed with our ages. This is not that place.
Old enough,
Old enough to vote.
ancient. Honestly, I've been around
Ancient,
since
yeah.
the dawn of.
Totally ancient.
I'm 30. If anyone cares. Thanks, Bridget. I care. I do.
Just pick a number. 69. I did both of them just for you on that. I can't have yours. Of course, Faye. Was actually impressed by the prospective VPs. They were courteous. Yeah. Again, when you come down to it, what is the thing? I guarantee, like I'm predicting, the thing that will be talked about the most about this VP debate is that they were respectful to each other. Like a good 75% of all conversation about this debate will be that they were respectful to each other. They'll talk about things that Vance said or didn't say. They'll talk about things that Wall said that they didn't like or liked. Like they'll mention it some, but I guarantee most of it is going to be that they didn't attack each other's character.
It's very sad.
Don't trust experts.
Great.
Yeah, I mean Vance's thing about experts was messed up. It was wrong. The idea that you
I
shouldn't
forgot
trust
about that.
experts was wrong. It was boring.
You admit that one expert was wrong one time.
Yeah, you admitted
You
one expert was
conceded.
wrong. That means all experts
You
are
don't
wrong.
trust any of them.
Guys, before everyone leaves, so this is our podcast. A More Perfect Podcast. Sorry, I have a lot of things in my brain right now. This is our podcast, A More Perfect Podcast. For those of you who know me, I used to be not a fan. Now I'm Mike. More Perfect Podcast. This is Eden. She's a co-host of A More Perfect Podcast. We are on YouTube. We are on Spotify. We are on Apple. Follow if you like podcasts. We are going to talk about anything and everything. Dude, my Matrix totally glitched. Totally glitched. Also, mark on your calendars, October 17th, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Big event going on this channel, both YouTube and TikTok. It's going to be awesome. We're going to be coming out with an episode of A More Perfect Podcast probably Thursday, and then there'll be another one coming later in the week, and then there'll be a bunch more coming. So follow. Please help us out. Yes, both of us are progressives. And I will not speak for Eden, but I will speak for myself. I'm willing to listen to to people that are willing to talk to me and be respectful and be willing to not know everything and be willing to admit that they could be wrong about something, even if they aren't. Just willing to admit it. That is what this channel is about. That is what the podcast is about.
Oh, sorry. You should kick me out then.
Oh, dang it.
I match energy. I'm just kidding.
No, I remember you getting angry because you wanted to have a conversation with someone and they wouldn't. I remembered that.
I mean,
and here's the thing though, Rena, I don't debate. I have a conversation. I discuss. I'm willing to discuss. I'm not willing to debate. Debates, or are you talking about the VP debate? If you're talking about the VP debate, yes, finally a respectful debate. Yes. I realize that's probably what you were actually talking about. He doesn't debate because he doesn't want to lose. Aw, $1 billion luxury.
A, B, C, D, E, F, you and your mom and your sister and your job and your broadcast car and that's it you call.
There's so much hostility in like the debate world. I feel like the conversation approach is more digestible for a lot of people. It's hard to listen to the debate sometimes because they're kind of just sad.
I disagree. I know they're not here anymore, but a debate is not a discussion where you disagree. A debate is where you just talk about what you think about something. I would argue that what JD Vance and Tim Walz did was more of a discussion than a debate. At least way more than any Trump debate has ever been. If you watch debate streams, they're just yelling at each other. They're not actually, the person on either side isn't willing to budge at all, isn't willing to admit that they are wrong at all.
But when they do, it's very satisfying.
It is very
It's
satisfying.
very few people, but
That is true. So yeah, also we do have a Discord if you like what we do here. So when you disagree, you just mute. No, when you act like a jerk, we mute, which is why you're already gone. Keep blocking your accounts. Okay.
gosh.
Like, guys, this is our TikTok. Like,
So I don't get. I
freedom
like
of
delete
speech
comments on my
does
video
not
and people are
exist.
like, TikTok.
Or I should say freedom of consequences from your speech does not exist.
Except, well, I don't know. There seems to be a little bit of a disproportionate targeting of I don't know. I won't say
No,
But-
I mean,
it.
There's
I just-
definitely, and you can get it from both sides. It's definitely worse on one side, but there is definitely a lot of people that want freedom of speech only to count for the things that they say.
Yeah, exactly. And then, the
Don't debate
retaliation
because I
is
don't want to
always,
waste time with people that ain't willing to listen. Yep. Sorry, I
Yeah,
didn't mean to
exactly.
interrupt you.
No, that's, I forget what I was saying. But yeah, totally.
But it's true. If you're not willing to listen, 4 accounts blocked now, what happens to my First Amendment? Does it offend you? You don't have a First Amendment in here. I'm not the government. It's sad that you've got 5 accounts. Do you understand how much that says about you that you have 5 accounts? That we have now blocked all of them?
Just give up. This is a time when it's okay to give up.
I mean, again, Vance did not speak the truth very much. But I will give him the tiniest amount of props for being respectful in his in his disagreement and in his lying.
I agree. We should give very minimal amount of props.
Again, and that shows how sad it is that the idea of being respectful should be the given. That should be the given.
Someday. We'll get back there.
What part of a debate is a discussion when you disagree was rude? I never said it was rude. I said it was wrong.
I feel like a debate is more trying to persuade someone, but it's just so unsuccessful such a large amount of the time that it just becomes a discussion where you're just uncivilly disagreeing a lot of the time.
Okay, Jaggy. Like, I don't know what you want from me. The mods' job is to keep this place a respectful, safe space. If they felt you weren't, then maybe you need to think about what you're saying. They know the rules. The question is, do you know the rules? No, he did not answer a single question. That is true. That is true. Again, his best line, I think the ultimate line, I mean, if it's not brought up, it should be, is, I'm going to answer the question because you asked it. Best line. And not for a good reason.
Oh, but it was really iconic, I gotta say. Memes can be made.
I bet that's going to turn into the new song. For those guys, you know, the
we should hop on
the
it
mixes.
before anyone else. I'm a never Trump guy.
Oh, he's a total
Never
Peter
liked it.
Thiel guy. Yeah. No, he didn't talk. And again, he's also the vice president. His job is to not have policy. His job is to help support the president's policy. And that's the real problem, is the president has no real policies, or at least has concepts of one, or the ones that he does have are horrible for the country. Vance did not, John. Not even close. It's not even close, dude. Oh, of course. Waltz related more to the average American? Absolutely. Absolutely he did. Again, I mean, that is one of the reasons that Kamala Harris brought Walz in. And I mean, and you can speak your thoughts too on it.
Oh, my thoughts on Walz.
Walz.
Oh, also, he literally did not say his name correctly the entire time.
Oh yeah, Waltz. He kept saying Waltz.
What
but yeah, Walz,
was that?
Whether or not Walz related more with the average American in the debate.
think he obviously did. To me, seems pretty. He's like everything. He is the person you'd feel safe leaving your child with. Who on earth would leave your child with a Trump or a childless cat lady Vance or a I don't know. I don't know. I just like I feel like we see these standards lower constantly, and it's like, oh, one of the common points people make is like, would you let this person be a teacher of children? And it's like, no, of course not. Then it's like you're voting for them for what? What do you mean? Anyways, I think Tim Walz is the opposite of that.
I think
Is that coherent?
again, I think Harris and Walz bring something that is much needed in our politics right now, which is sanity and the ability to work with other people, whether on a foreign or domestic. Yeah, I think he did. I think Walz did the job that he needed to do.
Yeah.
I mean, you could argue that in the grand scheme of things, Vance did the job that he needed to do, which is really not make things worse. Do I wish that he was kind of more insane and started talking about childless cat ladies and stuff to make it seem worse? Yeah, of course I want that, because I want Kamala Harris to win. But
I also think we should address the fact that JD Vance's sanity should not convince us that they're any less insane.
Oh yeah. Well,
I feel like we need to keep just like, hey, he was respectful during a debate. That's cool. They still, whatever, are actively terrorizing.
JD was not awesome. JD was mid. But in the grand scheme of things, so was Tim Walz.
Thank you, Ghost Trapped. Yeah. Yeah.
Your wallet can't afford 4 more years of what we wouldn't be 4 more years. Guys, Biden is not going to be the president after January 20th. Regardless of how wrong you are, that the reason that you have less money in your wallet is blaming it on Biden, that's a whole different thing. But Biden, who is in charge of policy for America, or at least deciding his policy, because, they don't have a filibuster-proof majority or anything like that. He's not running for president. She does not make policy right now. I guarantee she probably doesn't agree with some of Biden's policies, but her job is to support those policies. That's what she agreed to do when she agreed to be vice president.
Yeah. I was going to say, when she was doing the initial presidential, when she was debating against Biden, what year was that? 2019? I don't know.
2019.
They obviously had disagreements. They're not the same person. They're a team. But she's not the president.
Yeah, you're right, Lay. You're right. They bank on that. Can't believe Vance actually complained. Of course he complained. And here's the thing. She didn't really fact check, but she did. And you know that the GOP are going to go ballistic about it. She asked a question in a way because he wasn't answering questions. If he went wrong, Jack, that is just a dumb statement.
It's like lib facts or lib facts.
That's like saying all conservatives agree on the same policies. They don't. I don't trust Republicans right now because of MAGA, but no one agrees on all policies. So get over it. I mean, again, here's the thing. I wish Vance would say it, Vance is the vice presidential nominee. His job is to support the president. That is his job, just like that is Walz's job. Even if they disagree, that is their job. I know everyone wants them to stand up and be like, no, but when you agree to be the vice presidential nominee or the vice president, your responsibility is to be a tiebreaker, to take over as president and support the president's policy, no matter what, at least publicly. At least publicly. There's a lot of Republicans that have said they won't come out and vote for Trump. Yeah. Yep. Very true.
Yeah.
Sure.
Complaining about being fact-checked is actually crazy.
But here's the thing. When they get assigned to things like task forces, like let's talk about this whole border thing. She wasn't in charge of the border. She was given a task, which is look at 4 very specific countries. I think it was like Ecuador, or maybe not Ecuador, like Guatemala. I forget what the four Central American countries, was to look at the specific reasons as to why so many people were coming from those countries and give a report on how we as a country could help stem some of that immigration. And she did. We did. Yeah, Honduras. They put together policy to help those countries so less immigrants were coming from those countries. She was not in charge of the border. She was given a responsibility to give a report and suggestions on one specific thing having to do with immigration, and it worked.
I'm not sure if somebody already said this. Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras.
There you go. The border has crossed. No, actually, bordering crossings is down.
It is down.
And again, when you talk about how they count border crossings, if you cross and they send you back, and then you cross again and they interact with you again, that is considered 2 border crossings with the same person. You get caught 10 times. That is 10 border crossings to the number, even though you're getting turned back every single time. Border crossings does not mean everyone is coming into the country. Right. And the numbers that they give are the interactions. They call them. No, they aren't. User blah, 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 blah. Yeah, absolutely. It's the way they treat other human beings, Alvin. It's the way they treat other human beings. I will say again and again and again that my issue is how the GOP, MAGA, do not care about the rights, respect, dignity, and safety of certain groups of people in this country and in the world. That is a line in the sand for me. Are Dems for the wall now? Are Dems? No, we're for immigration reform. The immigration and so just because she put a wall in an ad does not mean she is. Oh my gosh.
Also, Democrats aren't like a monolith. I don't understand the whole there was a wall in one of Kamala's ads, so Democrats all want the wall now. That's crazy.
She had Trump's wall in an ad. She had the wall She had a video of her walking near the wall in an ad. We want immigration reform.
In a humane way.
We want a
not,
good path,
a Trump way.
true path to citizenship for people. We are a country of immigrants. All of you, unless you are indigenous, unless you are a member of the indigenous community, you are all immigrants. So get over it.
And research whose land you are living on,
Seriously.
because that's something we don't do enough.
Everyone's representatives are up
Yeah.
for the re-election.
Everyone?
All members
gosh,
of the House
Rebecca.
of Representatives.
I love Rebecca.
Hi,
Sorry.
Rebecca. My senators are not up for re-election, neither of them. But yeah,
Oh,
all representatives.
everyone's reps are. Okay.
Yeah, everyone from the House of Representatives are, and 33 technically senators are, but in this case it's 35 because of two other seats that opened up for whatever reason.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah, one of them was it Feinstein, the senator from California who passed away. So hers is up. Hers is up now, and then another one, I don't remember who. You're right, and that's true. Texas, that used to be part of Mexico. Texas used to be part of Mexico, guys.
Imagine that.
I'm just saying. Technically, Mexicans coming into Texas is them coming home. If we're being honest here.
Yeah.
So I'll say this again, guys. So this is welcome everyone to a More Perfect podcast. For those of you that have followed me before, used to be Natafan, used to be my channel. Now it's the podcast channel that I do and me and Eden do, called the More Perfect Podcast. Help us out. Follow us here. Follow us on YouTube. We really are. We're there's a lot of stuff going on in this on behind the scenes for us to try and grow this thing, and we really want to make this a thing. So please help us out. Follow us. Link in the bio. Eden, you need to put that link in your bio too, by the way.
I do.
Yeah.
It's going to be a very fun and informative, hopefully, podcast.
It will be a very fun and hopefully informative. It'll definitely
Let's
be
go.
fun.
Definitely fun. Hope a little information here and there.
Yeah, we'll
Is
give
all
you
we can really
information.
ask for. Yeah.
Parts of Colorado, New Mexico are also part of Mexico. That's true. When is that?
Thank you.
I mean, in general, there's already episodes out. So I started the podcast. If you go to the YouTube, it'll still say the old podcast name, which is Hammer of Truth. We're rebranding it, renaming it. So there are some original episodes in there. So we're putting out episodes starting this week. We're going to be recording one about the VP debate tomorrow, actually. So Iowa here. Appreciate this live. Thanks, Kayla. So yeah, please help us out with that.
Yeah.
We would greatly.
Follow my TikTok.
Yep, follow her TikTok. It's right here. It's right up here.
Things lagging.
We're trying to get Edens to 10K.
I'm trying really hard.
You got to be close.
like 500 away. I started posting in June. It's been like, how many? 3-4 months?
It's pretty good.
Yeah. So I'm
Sorry,
not
new to
mad.
this, but interesting. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna be posting a minimum once a week. We'll probably end up posting more than once a week, in the grand scheme of things. But we will definitely be at least posting once a week.
Cool.
All right, guys. I'm roasty toasty in here. Like because so I don't wake up everyone, I have to close the door, and it's just so hot with 3 monitors, 3 lights, and a big ass computer. So I'm like dying right now. Again, thank you everyone for hanging out with us. This was kind of the introduction of Edens to at least my community. Because that's one of the reasons we also thought it would be fun to do the VP debate. Again, October 17th, put it on your calendar. It's 9:30 on this channel, on YouTube and on TikTok. There's going to be a really big event going on. And then, I personally go live every morning at like 9:30, 10 o'clock. I'm sure Edens will go live at some point whenever.
Someday when I
Someday.
get the courage.
Well, you've already gone live, so.
Yeah, except I'm not even on the app, so I still don't know how it works.
Well, we'll get you on the app.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you guys for hanging out with us. I don't even know what happened. Thank you for the gifts,
Thanks,
for the
Willow.
likes, for the shares, for the follows here and on Edens TikTok. Again, please follow on the YouTube. That would help us out a lot. It really would. Watching the content would help out a lot.
Thank you, Ghostcraft. I will look. Thanks.
Thank you to the mods for helping out, for just keeping this community safe and watching out for everyone. These guys, big guys, if you don't throw some love to the mods, they worked hard during this debate. I saw stuff disappearing pretty constantly, which means they were working hard. So I appreciate you guys. We appreciate you guys. Yeah. You have anything else to say?
Thanks for letting me come up here.
Of course.
It's been a blast.
I missed the
Yeah,
debate. Who won?
excited.
No one really won, Rebecca. It was the only thing that was amazing about it was there was almost 6K in here at one point. Holy crap.
Yeah, honestly, I did not expect that. That's cool.
That's really cool. Yeah, it was kind of a mid. Like the most amazing thing about the entire stream, Rebecca, was that they were civil with each other. That it was a civil debate. That was really it. That was it. All right, guys. For those of you because Edens won't be here tomorrow, I'll be on in the morning. But thank you guys. I got to say my little thing. You guys are amazing just the way you are, and we love you all very much. Stay safe, stay healthy. Remember to sing, laugh, dance, and smile. Just do something that makes you happy. All right.